The supply crate made a dull thud as Owen Grant set it down beside the makeshift shelter. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the station's climate control. Moving through the refugee district always took longer than it should, but he never complained. These people had lost everything. He had only lost his legs. The Thinnery mother nodded her thanks as she took the medical supplies from the crate. Her 3 children peeked out from behind a tattered curtain that served as their door. Owen smiled at them before pushing his wheelchair toward the next distribution point. The wheels squeaked slightly on the metal deck plating. He made a mental note to oil them later. Station harmony stretched out in all directions, a massive ring of metal and hope spinning slowly above the war-torn planet below. The refugee district occupied the lower sections, where rent was cheap and dignity was cheaper. Hundreds of families from a dozen different species crowded into spaces meant for cargo storage. They cooked, slept, argued, and somehow survived in the shadows of the station's more prosperous levels. Owen had been making these runs 3 times a week for the past 8 months. Since his discharge from the military, he needed something to fill the hours between physical therapy sessions and sleepless nights. The district coordinator had been skeptical at first. A man in a wheelchair delivering supplies seemed impractical. But Owen had a stubborn streak that ran deeper than common sense, and he had proven himself capable enough that they stopped questioning him. He was loading empty crates onto his lap when he heard it, a sound that cut through the normal noise of the district like a blade. Crying, not the frustrated tears of a child or the grief of loss. This was something rawer, something that spoke of pain beyond the physical. Owen followed the sound to a narrow gap between 2 stacks of cargo containers. The space was barely wide enough for his wheelchair, but he managed to squeeze through. The crying grew louder, in the shadows behind the containers. A young Drachner huddled against the wall. His scales were the color of ash, dull and lifeless in the dim light. But it was his wings that made Owen stop and stare. They were shattered. Torn membrane hung in strips from broken bones. The wings were folded tight against his back, as if he was trying to hide them from the world. The Drachner looked up at Owen with eyes that burned with anger and shame. He was young, maybe equivalent to a human teenager. His claws scraped against the metal floor as he shifted position. "Go away," the Drachner said. His voice was rough from crying. Owen did not move. He had seen that look before. In the mirror, mostly, in the faces of his fellow soldiers at the rehabilitation center. It was the look of someone who had lost the part of themselves they thought defined them. "You hiding back here for a reason?" Owen asked. "I said go away. I heard you the first time." Owen looked around the cramped space. "This is a terrible hiding spot. No food, no water, no comfort. If you're trying to disappear, you picked the wrong place." The Drachner bared his teeth. "What do you know about it? You're just a human. You do not understand." Owen tapped the armrest of his wheelchair. "You are right. I do not understand what it is like to lose wings. But I understand what it is like to lose the thing that made you feel whole." The Drachner stared at the wheelchair. His expression shifted slightly, the anger mixing with something that might have been curiosity. "The Battle of Thorn Valley," Owen said quietly. 3 years ago, my unit was pinned down by artillery fire. I went back for 2 soldiers who were trapped under rubble. Got them out. Took shrapnel to the spine on the way back. Doctors said I would never walk again. They were right. "Then you know it is over," the Drachner said. "You know what it means to be useless." "I know what it means to feel useless," Owen corrected. "Big difference." The Drachner looked away. His tail curled around his legs in a protective gesture. "My name is Ash. My family died in the bombing 3 months ago. The blast that killed them also destroyed my wings. I'm the only survivor. The other Drachner here say I should have died with honor instead of living with shame." Owen felt anger flare in his chest, not at Ash, but at the casual cruelty of beings who measured worth by physical capability. He had heard similar words at the rehabilitation center. Well-meaning friends who said he had given enough. Family members who treated him like glass that might shatter at any moment. Fellow soldiers who could not look him in the eye anymore. "When was the last time you ate?" Owen asked. Ash hesitated. 2 days ago." "What?" I will not accept pity. Owen nodded slowly. Good. I do not offer pity, but I do need help with something. I have been trying to reorganize the supply depot for weeks, but I cannot reach the upper shelves. The coordinator keeps nagging me about it. You interested in earning some food, honestly? Ash looked suspicious. Why would you need my help? You could ask anyone. Because everyone else is busy with their own problems, Owen said. And because you look like someone who needs to feel useful again. Am I wrong? For a long moment, Ash said nothing. His claws scraped against the floor again. Pride and hunger warred across his face. Finally, hunger won. What do I need to do? Owen smiled. Follow me. We start with the basics. They emerged from between the containers together. Owen led the way back to the supply depot, and Ash followed behind him. The young Drachner moved awkwardly on all fours, clearly not used to ground-based movement. His wings dragged slightly behind him, and he flinched every time someone looked at them. At the depot, Owen showed Ash the problem. Supplies were stacked haphazardly, with heavier items on top of lighter ones. Everything needed to be sorted by type and weight. Owen could handle the lower shelves from his wheelchair, but the upper sections were beyond his reach. Ash stared at the mess for a moment. Then, slowly, he began to work. His movements were clumsy at first. He was used to using his wings for balance, for reaching, for everything. Without them, he had to relearn how his body worked. But he was strong. His legs and forearms had power that surprised even him. They worked in silence for over an hour. Owen sorted and labeled while Ash moved containers. Gradually, order emerged from chaos. When they finished, Ash was breathing hard, but something had changed in his eyes. The shame was still there, but it was not the only thing anymore. Owen handed him a ration pack. You earned this. Ash took it carefully. Why did you help me? Owen thought about the question, about the soldier who had visited him in the hospital, about the moment he realized that his life was not over, just different. Because someone helped me once, Owen said, and because being broken does not mean being useless. It just means finding a new way to be useful. Ash did not respond, but he did not argue either. He opened a ration pack and ate slowly, savoring each bite. Owen watched him and saw the beginning of something. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the possibility of hope. That would be enough for now. 3 weeks had changed everything and nothing. Ash still could not fly. Owen still could not walk. But they had developed a rhythm that worked. The supply depot was immaculate now. Every container had a place. Every item had a label. Owen handled inventory and organization from his position at ground level. Ash provided the height and strength that Owen lacked. Together, they were more efficient than any single person could be. The other refugees had noticed. Some looked at their partnership with approval, others with confusion, a few with outright disgust. Ash tried to ignore the stares, but Owen saw how they affected him. The young Drachner would tense whenever other members of his species passed by. His tail would curl tight against his body. His ruined wings would press flat against his back. They were restocking medical supplies when the confrontation happened. Point 4 Drachner landed in the depot courtyard. Their wings folded with the crisp precision of military training. The leader was massive, his scales dark as coal with scars that spoke of combat experience. He wore the insignia of a pilot, though it was torn and faded now. Ash, the leader said. His voice carried authority and contempt in equal measure. I have been watching you. Ash froze. His claws tightened on the container he was holding. Forge, he said quietly. Forge walked closer. His eyes swept over Ash with obvious disdain. You dishonor our people, working like a ground crawler, serving this crippled thing. He gestured dismissively at Owen. Owen kept his expression neutral. He had dealt with bullies before. In the military, in rehabilitation, in life. The words are different, but the pattern was always the same. Fear masquerading as strength. He has a name, Ash said. His voice was barely above a whisper. Does he? Forge's laugh was harsh. And do you have a name anymore? Or should we just call you Wingless? Broken? Shamebringer? The other 3 Drachner spread out slightly. They were not threatening violence, not exactly, but their positioning was deliberate, intimidating. Leave him alone, Owen said calmly. Forge finally looked at Owen directly. You have no voice here, human. This is a matter between Drakner, our culture, our laws, our shame. Funny, Owen said. I thought shame was something you felt about yourself, not something other people could force on you. You understand nothing. Forge took another step toward Ash. My family died in the war too. My children, my mate. But I did not survive by crawling on my belly. I maintained my honor. I continued to serve. You should have chosen death instead of this pathetic existence. Ash was shaking now. Not with fear, Owen realized. With rage, but also with agreement. Some part of Ash still believed what Forge was saying. That survival without flight was worse than honorable death. Owen moved his wheelchair between them. It was a small gesture, almost meaningless given the size difference. But it was enough to break Forge's focus. You know what I learned in the war? Owen asked. Honor is just another word powerful people use to convince others to die for them. Real courage is surviving when everyone tells you that you should not. Real strength is building a life when all the pieces are scattered. Forge's eyes narrowed. You are a fool, and you are making him into a fool as well. Maybe, Owen agreed, but at least we are useful fools. What are you? For a moment, Owen thought Forge might attack. The big Drakner's claws extended. His wings flared slightly, and he seemed to think better of it. Violence against a disabled veteran would not look good, even by his standards. You will fail, Forge said to Ash. Both of you. The galaxy has no place for broken things. He turned and leaped into the air. His wings caught the recycled station breeze and lifted him gracefully. The other 3 Drakner followed. Ash watched them go. His whole body was rigid. When they were gone, he slumped against the supply crate. He is right, Ash said. I am broken. I am useless. I should not have survived. Stop, Owen said firmly. You do not understand our culture. Flight is everything. Without it, I am nothing. Owen wheeled himself to the observation window. The depot had a small section of transparent aluminum that looked out over the station's interior. Ships moved through the vast central space, coming and going like schools of fish. Beyond them, through the far windows, the planet Redstone turned slowly. Come here, Owen said. Ash reluctantly joined him at the window. See those ships? Owen pointed. Half of them are damaged. Scorched hull plating, patched engines, makeshift repairs. They are broken, but they still fly. They still work. They still matter. That is different, is it? Owen turned to face Ash. After I lost my legs, a soldier visited me in the hospital. His name was Roy. He had lost both arms in an explosion. I remember looking at him and thinking how terrible it must be, how limited his life had become. You know what he told me? Ash shook his head. He said that losing his arms was the best thing that ever happened to him. Before the injury, he was just another grunt following orders. After, he had to think differently. He became a tactical instructor, taught thousands of soldiers how to survive, saved more lives from a classroom than he ever could have from a battlefield. He told me that being broken does not mean being useless. It means finding a new way to be useful. Ash was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I do not know how to find a new way. I only know how to fly. Then we figure out together, Owen said. That is what partners do. The word hung in the air between them. Partners, not helper and helped, not charity giver and receiver. Partners. Before Ash could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts activated on every public screen. Owen and Ash both turned to look. A news anchor appeared, her expression grave. This is an emergency bulletin. A civilian transport has crashed on Redstone in contested territory. Approximately 40 passengers are confirmed alive but trapped in the wreckage. Multiple rescue attempts have failed due to heavy weapons fire. Military command is considering options. The feed cut to footage of the crash site. The transport had come down in a narrow canyon. Debris was scattered across rocky terrain. Small figures moved near the wreckage, trapped and waiting. Owen stared at the screen. His mind was already working, analyzing the terrain, calculating angles and approaches. He had spent 10 years as a tactical specialist. Old habits died hard. What are you thinking? Ash asked. Owen did not answer immediately. He was studying the canyon walls, the enemy positions, the failed rescue attempts. Every military response had been aerial. Fast strikes from above. They kept getting shot down. I am thinking, Owen said slowly, that everyone is trying to solve this problem the same way. From the air, with speed and power. That is the correct way. Is it? Owen pulled out his datapad and started pulling up detailed maps of the crash site. Or is it just the way everyone assumes is correct? Ash moved closer to look at the maps. What do you see? I see a canyon system that no one is paying attention to. I see enemy forces positioned for aerial assault. I see a problem that needs ground-level thinking. Owen looked up at Ash. I see something a grounded soldier and a wingless dragon might actually be able to fix. That is insane. Probably, Owen agreed. He was already scrolling through contact lists on his datapad. But I know some people who are good at insane. You interested? Ash looked at the screen again, at the trapped civilians, at the failed rescue attempts. Then he looked at Owen, at this human who had somehow convinced him that broken things could still have value. Yes, Ash said. I'm interested. Owen smiled and started making calls. Behind them, through the observation window, ships continued their endless dance through the station's interior. And on the screen, desperate people waited for a rescue that might never come, unless two broken things could prove everyone wrong. Colonel Hayes looked older than Owen remembered. The war had aged everyone, but Hayes wore it particularly heavily. Deep lines creased his face, and his hair had gone mostly gray. He studied Owen across the desk with the same sharp eyes that had once evaluated combat reports. You are serious about this, Hayes said. It was not a question. Completely serious, sir. Hayes leaned back in his chair. Owen, I respect what you did for your unit. Your record speaks for itself. But you have been out of active service for 3 years. You are asking me to authorize a rescue mission led by a veteran in a wheelchair and a dragon who cannot fly. I am asking you to consider an approach that might actually work, Owen replied. He activated his datapad and projected a holographic map of the crash site onto Hayes' desk. Every rescue attempt has been aerial. Fast, aggressive from above. The enemy is positioned perfectly to counter that. They have air superiority in that canyon. But look at the ground level. Owen highlighted a network of smaller canyons that branched off from the main crash site. These passages are too narrow for aircraft, too winding for vehicles, but perfect for a small team on foot or wheels. He gestured to his wheelchair. Hayes studied the map. Assuming you could get there without being detected, the wreckage itself is unstable. Engineering reports say any conventional extraction could trigger a collapse, which is why we need unconventional thinking. Owen pulled up another display. I have been recruiting volunteers from the refugee district. People who know how to adapt because they have had to. People who see problems differently because they have different capabilities. You mean disabled refugees. I mean specialists. Owen corrected firmly. Colonel, you taught me that the best soldiers are not the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who can think around problems instead of through them. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Show me what you have. Owen contacted the others. They had been waiting in the corridor outside. Within minutes, they filed into Hayes' office. Pip came first. She was thinnery, barely 4 feet tall, with purple skin and large eyes. Her lower arms ended at the elbows, lost in an industrial accident years ago. She carried a toolkit that she had modified extensively to work with her remaining limbs. Behind her came Whisper, a Corvith whose eyesight had been destroyed by chemical weapons. His species relied heavily on echolocation, and losing his eyes had actually sharpened his other senses. He navigated Hayes' office with perfect precision despite never having been there before. Roy entered last. The human medic's burn scars covered the left side of his face and neck. He moved with a slight limp, but his hands were steady. He had served 3 tours before his injuries forced him into medical discharge. Hayes looked at the assembled group. Owen could not read his expression. Explain your plan? Hayes said finally. Owen walked them through it step by step. Pip would handle structural analysis and create tools for stabilizing the wreckage. Whisper would map their route and detect enemy positions through sound. Roy would provide medical support for the survivors. Ash would provide strength for clearing obstacles and holding unstable structures. Owen would coordinate tactics and navigation. The enemy expects aerial assault, Owen said. They're watching the sky. We go low. We use the terrain they are ignoring. We move slowly and carefully instead of fast and loud. We think like survivors, not warriors. Hayes asked pointed questions about timing, about contingencies, about what happens when things go wrong. Owen had answers for all of them. He had spent 3 weeks planning this, gaming out scenarios, preparing for failure points. Finally, Hayes stood. This is the most unconventional rescue proposal I have ever seen. Yes, sir. It violates approximately a dozen standard protocols. Yes, sir. And you honestly believe it will work? Owen met his eyes. I believe it has a better chance than anything else we have tried. Those people down there are running out of time. We can debate proper procedure, or we can save lives. Hayes walked to the window. Outside, Station Harmony's interior sparkled with lights. Ships moved through the vast space. Life continued while people died on the planet below. You understand that if this fails, the responsibility falls on you, Hayes said. I understand, sir. And you are all volunteers? No one is being pressured. Pip spoke up, her voice surprisingly deep for her small frame. Colonel, I lost my arms because safety regulations were ignored. I spent 2 years being told I was a liability. Owen is the first person who looked at me and saw capability instead of loss. I volunteer. Whisper's voice was soft but clear. My people abandoned me when I lost my sight. They said I could not contribute anymore. I volunteer. Roy simply nodded. I volunteer, sir. Ash stepped forward. His wings were folded tight, his posture defensive. I volunteer, he said quietly. Hayes turned back to Owen. You have 6 hours to prepare. I will provide transport to the insertion point and air support on standby. But Owen, if this goes wrong, I cannot protect you from the consequences. Understood, sir. Thank you. They left Hayes's office and headed for the equipment bay. The reality of what they were about to attempt was settling in. 40 lives, depending on a team, that most people would write off as broken. Are we really doing this? Ash asked as they gathered supplies. Owen was checking power cells for his wheelchair. Having second thoughts? No, just realizing how insane this is. Pip laughed while assembling her custom tools. Insane is trying the same failed approach over and over. This is just creative problem solving. They worked quickly and efficiently. Each person knew their role. Pip created specialized braces that could shore up unstable structures. Whisper memorized maps and sonic profiles of the terrain. Roy packed medical supplies for multiple species. Ash practiced moving through tight spaces, learning to use his bulk as an advantage rather than a hindrance. Owen coordinated everything, his tactical mind breaking the mission into manageable pieces. He felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose, not the kind that came from following orders, but the kind that came from choosing to act when action was needed. 2 hours before insertion, they gathered for a final briefing. Owen projected the route on a shared display. We insert here at dawn, he said, marking a point on the map. The canyon walls will give us cover from aerial detection. Whisper leads navigation. Pip and I handle problem solving. Roy stays with the survivors once we reach them. Ash provides muscle and structural support. Questions? What happens when we encounter enemy forces? Ash asked. We avoid them if possible. Our advantage is surprise and stealth. We are not there to fight. We are there to rescue. Owen paused. But if we have no choice, we defend the survivors. Whatever it takes. They all nodded. The transport bay was crowded with regular soldiers when they arrived. Young men and women in full combat gear. They stared at Owen's team with expressions ranging from confusion to pity. One soldier, barely out of training, approached Owen. Sir, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why are you doing this? You already gave enough. You do not have to prove anything. Owen considered the question. He thought about Ash hiding behind cargo containers, convinced he was worthless. About Pip being told she was a liability. About Whisper being abandoned. About Roy being pushed into early retirement. I am not trying to prove anything, Owen said. I'm just trying to help people who need help. Same as I always did. The young soldier nodded slowly, but Owen could see he did not really understand. That was okay. Owen had not understood either 3 years ago. Understanding came from experience, from loss, from learning that worth was not measured by what you had, but by what you did with what remained. The transport launched at dawn. Owen's team sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Through the viewport, the planet Redstone grew larger. The crash site appeared as a scar on the landscape, smoke still rising from the wreckage. Ash was staring at his reflection in the viewport. His wings were visible in the glass, broken and useless. "You ready?" Owen asked. Ash looked at him. "No, but I'm going anyway." "Good," Owen said. "That is what courage actually looks like." The transport descended toward the drop zone. The canyon system spread out below them like cracks in broken stone. Somewhere down there, people were waiting. People who had no idea that their rescue was coming from the least likely heroes imaginable. Owen checked his equipment one final time. His wheelchair was secured. His tactical displays were active. His team was ready. They had trained for this, planned for this. But now it was real. The transport touched down briefly, just long enough for them to disembark. Then it lifted off again, leaving them alone in the canyon. The mission had begun. The canyon was quieter than Owen expected. No birds, no wind, just the occasional distant rumble of weapons fire from the main battle lines. His wheelchair rolled smoothly over the packed sand, leaving thin tracks behind them. Whisper moved at the front of the formation, his head tilted slightly as he listened to sounds no one else could hear. He held up a hand. Everyone stopped. "Patrol," Whisper said softly. 30 meters ahead. 3 hostiles. Moving east. They waited in silence. Owen counted heartbeats. After 2 minutes, Whisper lowered his hand, and they continued forward. The first obstacle appeared within an hour. A rockslide had partially blocked their intended path. Large boulders created a maze of gaps and passages. Most were too narrow for Owen's wheelchair. "We need to find another route," Roy said. Owen studied the blockage. "No time. We are already behind schedule." He looked at Ash. "Can you move these?" Ash examined the largest boulder. It was easily twice his size. "I can try." He positioned himself against the rock and pushed. His legs strained. His claws dug into the ground. The boulder shifted slightly, then rolled aside. Ash repeated the process 3 more times, clearing a path wide enough for Owen to navigate. "Good work," Owen said. Ash was breathing hard, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. "I never realized how strong my legs were. I always relied on my wings for everything." Pip ran her diagnostic tools over the cleared path. "Stable enough. We can proceed." They moved deeper into the canyon system. The walls grew taller on either side, blocking out much of the sky. Good for cover, bad for escape if something went wrong. Whisper stopped them twice more to avoid enemy patrols. His hearing was proving more reliable than any sensor equipment. Owen made a mental note of that. Conventional military thinking relied too heavily on technology. Sometimes the oldest tools were still the best. The next challenge was a narrow crevice that split their intended path. It was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Definitely not wide enough for Ash. "I cannot fit," Ash said, eyeing the gap. Owen examined both sides of the crevice. "How deep does it go?" Whisper approached the edge and made a series of clicking sounds. He listened to the echoes. "About 4 meters down. Opens into a wider passage at the bottom." "Can you carry the equipment down?" Owen asked Ash. "Yes, but what about you?" Owen positioned his wheelchair at the edge of the crevice. "I go through the gap. You go around and meet me at the bottom. That is dangerous. Everything we are doing is dangerous." Owen began lowering himself from his wheelchair into the gap. Roy moved to help him. Owen wedged himself into the narrow space and began working his way down. The rock scraped against his sides. His useless legs dragged behind him as he pulled himself with his arms. It was slow, exhausting work, but he had spent 3 years learning how to move in ways that most people never considered. He reached the bottom and called up. "Clear." Ash carried the wheelchair and equipment around the long way. It took him 15 minutes to find a path his size could navigate. When he emerged into the lower passage, Owen was already examining maps on his datapad. "You are insane," Ash said, handing Owen his wheelchair. "I prefer determined." Owen pulled himself back into the chair. His arms were shaking from the effort, but he did not let it show. They continued through the lower passage. The walls here were smoother, worn by water that had dried up long ago. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the confined space. Whisper held up his hand again. This time his expression was more urgent. "We have a problem." Owen wheeled forward. "What is it?" "The main passage ahead is collapsed. Recent damage, probably from the fighting. The only alternative route takes us through enemy-held territory." Owen pulled up his maps. Whisper was right. The collapse blocked their direct path. Going around meant crossing an area that sensors showed heavy enemy activity. "How heavy is the enemy presence?" Owen asked. "Unknown, but I'm detecting movement. Multiple sources." Pip examined the collapsed passage. "I might be able to clear it, but it would take time and make noise. We would lose our stealth advantage." Owen weighed the options. Risk detection going around, or risk detection digging through. Neither was ideal. "There's a third option," Ash said quietly. He was looking at the canyon walls. "I could climb over, scout the enemy positions, report back what we are facing." "Too dangerous," Owen said immediately. "Everything we are doing is dangerous." Ash repeated Owen's own words back to him. "But I'm the only one who could make that climb. My wings may be broken, but my claws work fine." Owen wanted to argue, but Ash was right. He was the only one with the physical capability to scale the canyon wall safely. 30 minutes, Owen said. "If you're not back, we come looking for you." Ash nodded and approached the wall. His claws found holds that seemed impossibly small. He began to climb. Without his wings for balance, every movement had to be deliberate and careful. But his natural strength and agility were enough. He scaled 30 meters of vertical rock face in less than 5 minutes, to the top. He disappeared from view. The team waited in tense silence. Roy checked medical supplies. Pip ran diagnostics on her tools. Whisper listened for any sign of danger. Owen watched the chronometer on his datapad point 20 minutes past 25. Owen was preparing to send Roy up after Ash when movement caught his eye. Ash was descending, moving faster than he had going up. He dropped the last few meters and landed heavily beside them. "We have a bigger problem," Ash said between breaths. "The survivors are not just trapped. The wreckage is on a ledge. It is going to collapse. Soon. Hours, maybe less. Can we reach them in time if we go around?" Owen asked. "Maybe, but the enemy has the area locked down tight. 6 patrol units, heavy weapons, defensive positions. They are not trying to rescue the survivors. They're using them as bait." Owen felt cold anger settle in his gut. Using civilians as bait was a war crime. But crimes only mattered if you lived to prosecute them. "So we have to go through," Roy said. "We have to be smart about going through," Owen corrected. He studied his maps again, incorporating the information Ash had provided. An idea was forming. Risky, but everything about this mission was risky. "Whisper, can you map the exact positions of those patrol units using sound?" "If I get closer, yes." "Pip, can you create a distraction? Something loud that would pull their attention away from our actual approach." Pip's eyes brightened. "I have some equipment that could work. Give me 10 minutes. Owen laid out the plan. Pip would create a distraction on the far side of the enemy position. While they investigated, the team would slip through a narrow gap in their coverage. It required perfect timing and a lot of luck. They moved into position. Pip set up her device, a modified emergency beacon that would emit sounds and electromagnetic signatures similar to a rescue shuttle. She gave Owen a thumbs up. "On my mark," Owen said. He watched the chronometer count down. 3, 2, 1, mark. Pip activated the beacon. Immediately, the enemy forces reacted. Weapons fire erupted in the distance as they engaged what they thought was an incoming rescue attempt. "Move," Owen whispered. They slipped through the gap in enemy coverage. Whisper guided them around patrol patterns. Pip manipulated the beacon remotely, keeping the enemy focused on the wrong target. Roy stayed close to Owen, ready to help if the terrain became impassable. Ash brought up the rear, moving as quietly as something his size could move. His broken wings were pressed tight against his back, making him slightly smaller, slightly less visible. They were halfway through when something went wrong. A patrol unit changed direction unexpectedly, moving directly toward them. There was no cover, nowhere to hide. Down. Owen hissed. They pressed against the canyon wall. The patrol was 3 enemy soldiers, heavily armed, moving in formation. They would pass within meters of Owen's team. Owen's hand moved to the weapon at his side. He had hoped to avoid combat entirely, but he would not let his team be captured or killed. Not while he could still fight. The patrol was 10 meters away, 0.5 meters. Ash shifted slightly, and a small rock came loose. It clattered down the slope. The patrol stopped. They turned toward the sound. That Owen's finger tightened on his weapon. Then Whisper did something extraordinary. He opened his mouth and made a sound. Not a word, not a shout. A perfect mimicry of the local wildlife that used to inhabit these canyons. A bird call that echoed off the walls. The patrol relaxed. One of them laughed. They continued on their way, dismissing the noise as natural. When they were gone, Owen let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "That was close," Roy whispered. "Too close," Owen agreed. "But we are through. Let us reach those survivors before the whole ledge comes down." They moved faster now, knowing that time was running out. The crash site appeared ahead, visible through a gap in the canyon walls. Smoke still rose from the wreckage. Small figures moved near the debris, trapped and desperate. Owen could see the structural problem immediately. The entire transport had come down on an unstable ledge. Cracks spiderwebbed through the rock. One good shake would send everything tumbling into the canyon below. "Pip, can we stabilize it?" Owen asked. She studied the situation through her scanning equipment. "Maybe, but it will require someone strong to hold the main support beam while I install braces. And it will require someone small to get into the wreckage to attach those braces from the inside." They all looked at each other. The answer was obvious. Ash would provide the strength. Pip would provide the technical expertise. Owen would coordinate. Roy would prepare the survivors for evacuation. Whisper would watch for enemy approach. "Let us do this," Owen said. They moved toward the crash site, 5 broken things attempting the impossible. Above them, the sky was growing darker. A storm was coming, and on the ledge, a fragile structure held dozens of lives in the balance. The wreckage was worse up close. Twisted metal groaned with every small shift in weight. The smell of fuel and burnt electronics hung heavy in the air. Through gaps in the hull, Owen could see survivors huddled together. Their faces showed the exhaustion of people who had given up hope. Roy moved forward first, calling out in a gentle voice, "We are here to help. Stay calm and stay still." Any sudden movement could destabilize the structure. A thinnery woman peered out through a crack. Her eyes went wide when she saw Owen's wheelchair, then Ash's broken wings. "You are the rescue team?" "We are," Owen confirmed. "How many survivors?" 38. 12 are injured. 3 critically. She hesitated. "There are children." Owen felt the weight of that information settle on his shoulders. Children always made everything more complicated, more urgent, more important. Pip was already scanning the structure with her equipment. The main support beam is cracked through the center. It is the only thing keeping the wreckage from sliding off the ledge. If it fails, everything goes down. "How long do we have?" Owen asked. "Minutes. Maybe an hour if we are lucky." Pip pointed to a section of debris. "I can reinforce the beam, but someone needs to hold it steady while I work. The weight is substantial, and the position is awkward." They all looked at Ash. He studied the beam, calculating angles and weight distribution. "I can do it, but I will not be able to help with anything else. We work with what we have," Owen said. "Ash holds the beam. Pip reinforces it. Roy, start triaging the injured. Prioritize who needs immediate evacuation. Whisper, keep watch for enemy movement." "What will you do?" Ash asked. Owen looked at the wreckage. There was a narrow gap near the bottom, barely wide enough for a person. Definitely not wide enough for someone Ash's size. "I get the people out." He approached the gap and lowered himself from his wheelchair. The space was tight, but he had learned to navigate tight spaces over the past 3 years. He pulled himself inside. The interior of the transport was chaos. Seats had torn loose. Cargo had shifted into deadly projectiles. Survivors had wedged themselves into whatever safe spaces they could find. Many were injured. All were terrified. Owen pulled himself toward the nearest group. A human family, parents and 2 young children. The father had a broken leg. The mother was shielding the children with her body. "I'm Owen," he said calmly. "I'm getting you out of here. Can you move?" The mother nodded. "The children can, but he cannot." She gestured to her husband. "I will come back for him. Get the children to the opening. A medic is waiting outside." She hesitated, not wanting to leave her husband. Owen understood, but there was no time for sentiment. "Every second this wreckage stands as a gift," Owen said. "Do not waste it." She gathered the children and moved toward the exit. Owen continued deeper into the wreckage. He found a Drachner family next, a mother and 3 young children. The children's wings were small and weak, not yet developed enough for sustained flight. The mother saw Ash through a gap in the hull. She saw his broken wings. Her expression hardened with disgust. "No," she said. "We will wait for a proper rescue, not from something wingless." Owen felt anger flash through him. That wingless dragon is currently the only thing keeping this entire structure from falling into the canyon. Your prejudice or his rescue? Choose now. She looked at her children. Pride warred with maternal instinct. Instinct won. "Fine," she said coldly. Owen guided them to the exit. Roy took charge of them, moving them to a safe position away from the unstable ledge. Outside, Ash had positioned himself under the main support beam. His powerful legs were braced against solid ground. His back and shoulders took the weight of the beam. His broken wings were pressed flat against his body to avoid interference. Sweat beaded on his scales. His muscles trembled with effort. "How are you doing?" Owen called out. "Heavy," Ash grunted. "Work faster." Pip was installing supports with her modified tools. Her smaller arms worked in spaces that larger limbs could not reach. She moved with practiced efficiency, but the work was delicate. One wrong move could trigger collapse. Owen went back inside. He found more survivors. Some could walk. Some needed to be carried. Owen dragged himself through the wreckage, finding people, guiding them, refusing to leave anyone behind. He reached a section near the back of the transport. A young Drachner was trapped under a fallen beam. Not the main support, but heavy enough to pin him. The child was maybe 8 years old in human terms. His wings were pressed painfully against the deck. "Help," the child whimpered. "It hurts." Owen examined the beam. Too heavy for him to lift alone. He needed leverage. He looked around for something he could use. That was when the whole structure lurched. "Outside," Ash cried out. The main beam had shifted. Cracks were spreading faster through the rock ledge. "Pip, how much longer?" Owen shouted. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. They did not have 3 minutes. Owen made a decision. "Roy, start evacuating everyone who can move on their own. Get them down the canyon. Do not wait for us." "Owen, dash." Roy started to protest. "That is an order. Get them to safety. Now." Roy hesitated, then nodded. He began organizing the mobile survivors for evacuation. The Drachner mother, who had scorned Ash, helped guide the children. Others moved as quickly as they dared across the unstable ground. Owen turned back to the trapped child. "What is your name?" "Spark," the child said through tears. "Okay, Spark, I'm going to get you out, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" The child nodded. Owen positioned himself and tried to lift the beam. It shifted slightly, but not enough. He tried again, pulling with every bit of strength his arms possessed. The beam moved a few centimeters. The structure lurched again. More violent this time. "Owen, get out of there!" Ash shouted. His voice was strained with effort and fear. "Not yet." Owen pulled harder on the beam. His muscles screamed. His vision started to narrow. But the beam shifted enough. Just enough. "Crawl out," Owen told Spark. "Now." The child scrambled free. Owen grabbed him and pulled them both toward the exit. They were halfway there when the main support beam finally cracked completely. "It is going," Pip shouted. Ash roared with effort. holding the failing beam through sheer will. His legs were shaking. His claws had torn through the rock beneath him. But he held. Owen reached the exit and shoved Spark through. "Run!" The child scrambled away. Owen tried to pull himself out, but his legs caught on debris. He was stuck. The beam was failing. Ash could not hold it much longer. "Leave me," Owen shouted. "Get clear." "No." Ash's voice was absolute. "We are partners. We do this together or not at all." Pip abandoned her tools and crawled into the wreckage. Her small size let her reach Owen quickly. She pulled at the debris, pinning his legs. It would not budge. Outside, Whisper had abandoned his watch post. He joined Ash under the beam, adding his strength to the dragons. It was not much, but it was something. Roy appeared at the entrance. He grabbed Owen's arms and pulled. Pip pushed from behind. The debris shifted. Owen came free. They dragged him from the wreckage just as the main beam gave way completely. "Run!" Roy shouted. Ash released the beam and lunged away from the wreckage. Whisper followed. They all scrambled away from the ledge as the entire transport tilted, groaned, and then slid over the edge. The sound of the crash echoed through the canyon. Metal screamed against rock. The wreckage tumbled end over end until it hit the canyon floor hundreds of meters below. They collapsed in a heap, breathing hard, covered in dust and sweat. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Spark appeared, the young Drakner Owen had rescued. He approached Ash carefully and touched one of his broken wings. "Thank you," Spark said quietly. "You are the bravest dragon I ever met." Ash looked at the child, at the 37 other survivors scattered across safe ground, at Owen and the others who had risked everything. "I am just a dragon who learned to do things differently," Ash said. Weapons fire erupted in the distance. The enemy had noticed the wreckage collapse. They would investigate soon. "We need to move," Owen said, pulling himself back into his wheelchair. "Everyone who can walk, start down the canyon. Roy, organize them. Whisper, lead the way. Ash, Pip, help with the injured." They moved as quickly as they could manage. 38 civilians plus Owen's team, making their way through hostile territory with limited supplies and no backup. Owen sent an emergency signal to Colonel Hayes. "Package secured. 38 souls. Requesting immediate extraction from fallback position." Hayes's voice came through with static. "Copy that. Extraction inbound. ETA 15 minutes. Be advised, enemy forces are converging on your position. 15 minutes. They just needed to survive 15 more minutes." Owen looked at his team, at Ash helping carry injured survivors, at Pip guiding terrified children, at Whisper navigating impossible terrain, at Roy providing medical care while moving. They were broken. All of them. But they were also something more. They were survivors. And survivors knew how to fight for 15 more minutes. Station Harmony had never been so crowded. The refugee district overflowed with people, but this time they were celebrating instead of mourning. News of the rescue had spread across the station within hours. 38 impossible survivals. 5 unlikely heroes. Owen sat in his wheelchair at the edge of the crowd, watching the chaos with quiet satisfaction. The survivors had been reunited with their families. Medical teams had treated the injured. Everyone was safe. That was all that mattered. Colonel Hayes approached with 2 other officers. "Owen Grant, on behalf of the military command, I am authorized to present you with a commendation for exceptional service under hazardous conditions." Owen accepted the medal. It was heavy in his hand, metal shaped into symbols of honor and courage. He had received medals before. They always felt strange, like trying to quantify something that could not be measured. "Your team performed admirably," Hayes continued. "We are establishing a new division focused on unconventional rescue operations. I would like you to lead it." Owen looked at his team, scattered through the crowd. Roy was teaching basic first aid to a group of interested refugees. Pip was showing children how her modified tools worked. Whisper was talking with other Corvith about adaptive techniques. Ash was surrounded by young Drakner, all of them listening intently as he spoke. "What kind of division?" Owen asked. "Specialized tactical operations. Situations that require thinking beyond standard military doctrine. You prove that unconventional approaches can succeed where conventional ones fail. We want to formalize that capability. It was a good offer, meaningful work, a chance to save more lives. Owen should have accepted immediately. I need to think about it, he said instead. Hayes raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Take your time. The offer stands. As the officers left, Forge approached. The large Drachner moved stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. He stopped a respectful distance from Owen. I came to apologize, Forge said. His voice was quiet, lacking its previous arrogance. To both of you. Ash looked up from his conversation with the children. He approached cautiously. Forge looked at the ground. I said you dishonored our people by surviving without flight. I said you were broken and useless. I was wrong. Why are you telling me this? Ash asked. Because I watched you hold that beam. I saw the structural analysis afterward. The weight you supported should have crushed you. But you held it long enough to save 38 lives. Forge finally met Ash's eyes. I mocked you because I was afraid. Afraid of becoming like you. Afraid of losing my wings and becoming worthless. And now, Owen asked, now I understand that worth has nothing to do with wings, or legs, or any physical capability. Forge touched his own wings gently. These make me a good pilot, but they do not make me a good person. That requires something else. Ash studied the older Drachner. What will you do now? Learn, Forge said simply. If you will teach me. Over the next few weeks, Owen's team became something more permanent. The station administrators offered funding for a training center, a place where people like them could learn new skills, find new purposes, discover that limitations were just invitations to innovate. The center occupied a converted cargo bay in the refugee district. Owen and Ash transformed it into a functional training facility. They built spaces for physical therapy, tactical education, technical training, and emotional support. Refugees came slowly at first. People who had lost limbs, sight, mobility. People who had been told they were finished. People who had given up. Owen and his team showed them differently. Pip taught engineering and adaptive tool design. Whisper taught sensory awareness and alternative navigation. Roy taught medicine and trauma response. Ash taught physical conditioning and mental resilience. Owen taught tactics, strategy, and something harder to define. He taught people how to see their limitations as starting points rather than ending points. 3 months after the rescue, a young soldier arrived at the center. She had lost her right arm in combat. Her expression was hollow, defeated. Owen recognized that look. I was a sniper, she said. Best in my unit. Now I cannot even hold a rifle properly. What am I supposed to do? Owen wheeled himself to the equipment locker and pulled out a modified rifle. Pip had designed it to be operated one-handed, with controls adapted for different grip styles. Learn to shoot differently, Owen said, or learn something completely new. Your choice. But understand that losing one capability does not mean losing all capability. The soldier stared at the rifle. You make it sound simple. It is not simple, Owen admitted. It is hard. It requires admitting that your old life is gone and building a new one from scratch. But hard does not mean impossible. Ash was working with a newly arrived Drachner refugee. The dragon had lost her wings in the same bombing that had destroyed Ash's family. She was older than Ash, more bitter. I would rather be dead, she said flatly. Ash did not argue. Instead, he showed her his own wings. The scars, the broken bones, the useless membrane. I said the same thing 3 months ago. I meant it. Then someone showed me that life without flight was still life. Still valuable. Still worth living. Who? Ash gestured to Owen across the training floor. A human who could not walk. He taught me that strength comes in different forms. The Drachner woman watched Owen working with the young soldier. What did he lose? His legs. His military career. His certainty about who he was. Ash paused. But he gained something too. Purpose beyond following orders. The ability to help people in ways he never could before. I do not want to be inspirational, the woman said bitterly. I do not want to be a lesson for others. I just want to fly again. Then you will be miserable, Ash said bluntly. Because that will never happen. Your wings are gone. Your old life is gone. You can spend the rest of your existence mourning what you lost, or you can discover what you still have. The woman looked at him with anger. Then the anger faded into something else. Curiosity, maybe, or the first tiny seed of hope. What do I still have? She asked. Ash smiled. Let us find out together. That evening, Owen and Ash stood on the observation deck. It had become their routine, watching the ships move through the station's interior while they discussed the day's progress. 15 new people joined the program today, Ash said. Word is spreading. People are traveling from other stations to train here. We will need more space soon, Owen noted, and more instructors. We cannot do this alone. Owen nodded. I've been thinking about Colonel Hayes's offer. The military wants to formalize what we do, create an official division for adaptive operations. Will you accept? I do not know. Part of me wants to. The work is important, but I worry about losing what makes this place special. We're not military. We're not bound by regulations and protocols. We help people however we can. Ash was quiet for a moment. You do both. Run the center and consult for the military. They get expertise when they need it. We maintain independence for the people who need us. It was a good compromise. Owen felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. Below them, the training center was still active. Lights glowed in the windows. People moved through exercises, learned new skills, discovered new capabilities. The broken things were becoming whole again, just in different shapes. Spark asked me a question today, Ash said suddenly. The child from the rescue. He asked if I was sad about my wings. What did you tell him? I told him the truth. That yes, sometimes I am sad. I miss flying. I miss the freedom of the sky. But I also discovered things I never would have known if I still had my wings. Like what? Like how strong my legs actually are. Like how much I can carry when I am grounded. Like the satisfaction of building something instead of just soaring above it. Ash touched his broken wings gently. I told him that I do not fly the way I used to. But I fly every time someone I help takes their first step forward. I fly every time someone discovers they're not broken, just different. Owen felt something catch in his throat. Pride, maybe, or just recognition of how far they had both come. That is a good answer, Owen said. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the endless movement of ships and people. Station Harmony turned slowly on its axis, creating the illusion of gravity, of normalcy, of life continuing despite everything done a month later. The center hosted its first graduation. 20 people who had completed the training program. They had learned new skills, found new purposes, rebuilt their lives from fragments. The young soldier was among them. She had become an instructor, teaching marksmanship with adaptive techniques. The Drakner woman had discovered a talent for structural engineering, using her ground-level perspective to solve problems others missed. Owen watched them receive their certificates, watched their families celebrate, watched the pride replace the shame they had carried when they first arrived. Colonel Hayes attended the ceremony. Afterward, he approached Owen with paperwork. The compromise you suggested, Hayes said. It is approved. You maintain full autonomy over the center. The military contracts your services on a case-by-case basis. No obligations. No restrictions. Owen signed the agreement. It felt right. They could help more people this way, both those who came to the center and those trapped in situations requiring unconventional solutions. We have another situation developing, Hayes added, similar to the canyon rescue. Conventional approaches are failing. Interested, Owen looked at Ash. The dragon nodded. Give us the details. Owen said. A.S. Hayes explained the new crisis. Owen felt the familiar analytical part of his mind engaging. Assessing, planning, finding angles that others missed. It was who he was, not despite his wheelchair, but inclusive of it. His limitations had forced him to think differently, and thinking differently had become his greatest strength. The ceremony continued around them. Children played. Families laughed. People who had been broken discovered they were actually just different. And difference, Owen had learned, was often exactly what the galaxy needed. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Owen and Ash sat in the empty training center. The lights were dim. The equipment was silent. But the space felt alive with possibility. Do you ever regret it? Owen asked. Everything that happened. Everything you lost. Ash considered the question carefully. His claws tapped against the floor in thought. I regret the bombing. I regret losing my family. I regret the pain. He looked at his broken wings. But I do not regret who I became because of it. The dragon I was before would never have helped those people. He was too focused on flying high to notice the people on the ground who needed help. And now I stand on the ground by choice. Not because I cannot fly, but because there is important work here. Work that matters more than soaring. Owen nodded slowly. He understood completely. They sat in silence, two broken things that had discovered they were actually whole, just shaped differently than expected. Outside the observation windows, Station Harmony continued its eternal rotation. Ships came and went. People lived their lives. The galaxy turned with beautiful indifference. But in one converted cargo bay, in a training center built by people who refused to accept limitations, something small and powerful was growing. That IT was the understanding that worth was not measured by what you lost, but by what you did with what remained. IT was the knowledge that being broken was just another way of being whole. That IT was the certainty that the strongest people were not those who never fell, but those who learned to stand differently. When they could not stand the same way anymore, Owen Grant could not walk. Ash could not fly, but together they had learned to soar.